Hi, welcome to episode 46 of the ChessTDD series. It has been a while, but luckily this time I'm actually doing the recording right after coding. That's usually my goal. And I fit this episode pretty neatly into 20 minutes. Everything went well here. So for the first part of this, I decided to add a card to be clear on the Trello board here that I want to refactor this ugly method. I had remembered that from last time. And what I've kind of decided on doing is finishing out the series and getting all the functionality in place. And then I'm probably going to package this up as some sort of product and show you how I'd go back and make this code like really clean and readable so it could be built on as a library. And then run static analysis with end-dependent and maybe some other things. So anyway, long and short of it is, I'm maybe saving the perfection refactoring for that, but this was a bridge too far. This method is getting to the point where if this were a team that I was coaching and that method were in place, I would criticize me. Well, you know, I try not to be rude, but I would gently poke at me and say, Eric, that's not awesome. You know, maybe you should consider doing something different here. So hopefully you can take some heart in that too. Like, you know, even I write nastiness like this, as much as I'm an advocate for clean code and everything. You know, you do it, you get it working, you get the reasoning out, and then you refactor. It's one of the beauties of this approach, covering everything with unit tests, is you get to separate actually getting it to work and kind of dumping your brain into the code from, you know, how am I actually going to leave this and how am I going to do this for another person? So what you're seeing me do here that's, you know, perhaps of interest is I'm sort of working through in my head, what exactly do I want to refactor here? And a lot of times, or I should say extract. I know I want to extract this method. I want to get all this en passant stuff out of the move method. And what you'll see me do a lot of times is play around with what I want to extract. So the first thing I tried, I was like, well, let me grab this code. And that had 3 parameters, which I kind of shied from. 3 is kind of my absolute max for a method. And 3 parameter methods are sort of hard to reason about. So I thought, okay, looks like if I just go inside that if conditional, I can get down to this 1 coordinate destination. So I think I'm going to try that. And it really is kind of a trial and error sort of thing. So for me, I'll, you know, pick a bit of code that looks like maybe a candidate for refactoring. And I've gotten better at it over the years of predicting, but I'll grab that, I'll extract it, see what it looks like, see if I can give the method a good name. That's another great indicator for if your extract method makes sense. If you struggle to give it a name, you might not be extracting a cohesive piece of functionality. So that's what you're seeing me do here. I'm kind of thinking, okay, what is this actually doing? So I've gotten down to 1 argument. This seems cohesive to me. And then I iterate a little bit on the name. Set en passant if applicable pawns are present. Well, no, a candidate, I like that better. I don't remember if I iterate on this even further, but the idea is you want to sort of drive towards a good name because, you know, that makes your code maintainable for you or for someone else later, but it also indicates that you're reasoning clearly about what's going on. You should not struggle too much to give any method in your code base a pretty good name. If you're really struggling to come up with it, like I said, that's probably an indication that you don't have a very cohesive method. So what I'm doing here now is I glanced at this, and this is another skill that you'll develop over the course of time if you have a mind toward clean code, is to start to recognize patterns. It's almost like if you squint and you don't read, do you have bits of code that look very similar? And often that's an indication that even if you haven't copy and pasted it, you're duplicating your reasoning. So I noticed that here, that I'm doing very similar things in those 2 chunks of code in that method. And so I started to hypothesize that it looks like maybe the only thing that's different between these 2 pieces of code is I have this check for the coordinate being valid for the board size in the 1 clause. And then aside from that, it's just whether it's x plus 1 or x minus 1. So my hypothesis, and this is one of the other things I love about test-driven development and all the coverage, is it lets you be pretty experimental. So I have this hypothesis that if I run both the right and the left moves through checking for validity for the board size, I don't think that will be a problem. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to assume that it's going to be okay, and I'll confirm that by keeping things green. So what I figured out that I can do is eliminate this duplication by, at least at first, just passing into this method 1 and -1. So I'm back to green. All the tests went green. I'm happy there. And now here's the real test to see if, like I said, this board coordinate check should be okay. So I'm going to pass in now +1, and I have a much cleaner method. Everything goes green, so that's good. Now I just want to delete this code because I don't want it, and that's my real check, and there it is. So that's a success. Now I have eliminated this duplication and factored it into this one method. But I don't think I'm done here. I start to look at this, and as long as I'm in here, I think that I can do a little bit better. So what I'm noticing is I have this destination. You'll see me make a note here too. I've kind of taken to doing that since I record the audio afterwards. It helps to give myself cues for things I want to make sure to mention, which is I've really gotten away. I used to use regions, and then it just became noise to me. If your classes are reasonably small and cohesive, you don't need them. Regions are sort of like cologne. You shouldn't spray cologne on yourself. You should probably just take a shower if you're really starting to smell. Anyway, I don't like regions, so I'm sticking this one in as a thing that won't affect the production code, just to remind me, hey, I've got this thing in here that doesn't really seem to be, it no longer seems to belong in this class. These are methods that they do refer to instance state, but I believe only the board size. And really all of this stuff about en passant feels like it should go in another class. Now that's probably something I'll get to after I wrap up this series. We'll see. But that doesn't feel right. So I'm putting it in this region, and it's borne out by, you'll watch as the episode goes on, this winds up having some other methods that get inserted in here, that there's really this whole growing class. So lesson to take away, I strongly encourage you when, if you're in a situation like this and you start to get the sense that maybe you're developing a growth inside your class that could be another class, you know, make that visible early and keep that visible to yourself. It'll be easier than if you come in, 6 months from now. So back to the code, what I'm doing here is I'm starting to say, and I'm creaky and rusty with this code base as always, because it's been 2 or 3 weeks since I looked at it, but I started to think, like, what is 1 and -1? That's not real readable. It's not obvious what I'm doing. That seems like sort of a cheap gimmick. So really what I'm doing is I'm reasoning through 2 coordinates. There's the destination for this move, and then there's this en passant candidate coordinate. So why am I passing in +1 and -1? Why don't I just define that more explicitly in the en passant candidate method and say, hey, I've got this board coordinate that is an en passant candidate here. And I believe that's going to be the piece that's to the left or right of destination. Or I'm sorry, the coordinate that's to the left or right of destination. So what I'm thinking is it'll make a lot more sense for this set en passant, and hopefully I went in and changed the name of this, but set en passant for destination with X offset. Like, let's forget this X offset thing and instead just define the actual coordinate that we're concerned with. And then all we're really going to do is, given the 2 coordinates, we'll set en passant for the appropriate piece. That's a much more, that's a much cleaner division of the labor of these methods, I think. And that's something in general that I'm big on. You communicate between methods, between classes, namespaces, whatever. Make the communication between that clear. I mean, it's all right to pass literals around. It's all right to use primitive types, if that makes sense. But here, these methods, it makes sense for them to be speaking to one another in terms of the domain, which is the coordinates on the board. So, looks like maybe I didn't go back and give this method another name. That's too bad. hopefully, I did think to go back. Yeah, so piece, clearly piece left of destination no longer makes sense. I'm pretty sure I went in and renamed that again. But I was probably concerned first and foremost with deleting those parentheses for some reason. That's another thing you'll see me do. You may not agree with it. I think everybody has their own stylistic preference, but it was something I saw years ago in one of the Clean Coder videos, I think, or I forget where, but Uncle Bob Martin said it, like, I am not going to put brackets after my control flow statements because I believe there only ought to be one line of code after a control flow statement anyway. If you want to go adding more stuff in there and polluting it, then you add the brackets. And I very much feel that way too. It's a great way, favoring that sort of approach is a great way to force yourself not to bury a bunch of stuff after control flow statements. So that is... a bummer. I see that I actually failed at doing 2 renamings in there. So what I'm going to do actually is while I am recording this audio, I'm going to make a note to myself. So you're going to hear me thinking out loud, and I'm going to say in progress, rename en passant methods and variables in board class. Hopefully that will be enough of a cue. What you're seeing me do is I'm moving on. I'm satisfied with the refactor part of the red-green refactor cycle, and the rest of this episode is going to be concerned with me writing an acceptance test and then getting it to pass. And this acceptance test is going to be an important one, which is to make off the top of my head, to make the white side of the board's en passant capabilities whole, which is that if the black pawn, or I'm sorry, if the white pawn goes into a double move, making it a target for en passant, that's fine. The black pawn can do it, but only that turn. So what I'm doing is adding a couple of other pieces to the board, and I'm going to simulate a situation where the white pawn makes itself vulnerable to en passant. Then the black player opts to do some other move, and then the white player does still another move. The en passant should no longer be an option. So that's the acceptance test that I'm going to write. It's going to fail, and then the rest of the episode will be getting it to pass. And while I'm doing that, I'm writing this checklist about the left piece. And I believe the other one was, I don't know, method about offset. All right, now I'm done with my housekeeping. Sorry to sneak that in on you, but I wanted to be sure to have it. So next episode, you'll see that right at the top of in progress. I guess that's not strictly accurate, but it, you know, you do your best. I'm trying to keep my whip limit to about 2 here on this board for in progress. And I guess strictly speaking, it is not in progress per se, but I hope you can all find it in your hearts to forgive me. So what you can see here, back to the acceptance test, is it's still allowing us en passant. So what I got to do is go, and I was trying to like mentally map the board. In other words, putting the cursor in places and like tracing out these moves in my head, which, you know, speaks to the people who are writing in and talking about, which is really cool, putting a much better scheme on top of this for the acceptance tests and that. And I think that's another thing that I might look at doing for the, you know, the sort of end product to this that I'm thinking about having. So anyway, all that aside, I deleted that move. So the en passant should no longer be available. And now I got to kind of figure out where to go and put this. And there are 2 places that things are happening. There is the board where move is taking place and get moves from is taking place. And then there's the pawn itself. So kind of first I thought about, okay, should I put it in board or should I put it in pawn? In essence, should I do something on the board to make a restriction here? Or should I figure out somehow on pawn when to return or not return an en passant location as a valid move? what I came to think about is, in my head, the best way to do this, it might not be the most efficient way to do this, but the easiest, kind of lowest impact way is anytime, if I'm the white player, anytime I move and the move I'm making is or isn't an en passant capture, every time I move, things go back to square one. The only time en passant, if I'm the white player, becomes available to me is if the black player does something. So on his turn, the black player triggers, potentially, depending on his move, triggers en passant available. Now, I have this one move where I can do en passant. So when I move, if I have not done en passant, at that time, I should reset for all the pieces on the board. Like, there's no longer any en passant. I've punted on that. It's not my right anymore. So what I'm doing initially is I'm going to add, and my goodness, I've been doing a lot of stuff in as much as I code with Java lately. So I'm sort of, sadly, C# is not right at my fingertips the way it used to be. Java, it's like C# 5 years ago. I'm sorry. Anyway, so what I'm ultimately doing here is I'm going to iterate through this two-dimensional array of pieces. And I was trying to figure out maybe a slicker way to do this, but then figured, hey, let's just get the test passing. And all I'm going to do is cast these pieces as pawns. And if that works, and there's another thing that's important to check for here to make this the right algorithm, is I have to make sure that that I'm only doing this for pawns that are my pawns. So conceptually, this is doing what I'm describing, which is there's a move. Let's say I'm white, and I do some move. Now you can see all the move logic, add piece, remove piece, etc. Now after that, what I should do is go and find all the white pawns on the board and clear their en passant flag. I don't want to do that for the black pawns, or I will completely invalidate all the above logic for en passant. So there, what I did is I declared a method that I'm going to put on pawn, which is exactly what I'm looking for. So far, there's nothing on there that really does exactly what I'm looking for. And that's to clear the en passant flag for the pawn. Now, what I noticed as I was doing this, and you'll see me back out the method real quick. Oh, set can, it was like set can perform en passant on. That's sort of awkward. But I realized I could reuse that method. And then, you know what? I made an executive decision not to. Because clear en passant is, I think, much more indicative of what my intentions are than set en passant target to null. And furthermore, I would then have to figure out what the en passant target had been, but I don't care. I just want to tell it, hey, there is no en passant target anymore. Forget it. You're done. So I opted to leave that method. That might be something we revisit later to see if we can consolidate. I don't know. I think you should constantly be in a state of auditing your code base for readability and trying to augment that readability. So I don't put too much stock in any one thing. I just have the knowledge that I'll be Boy Scouting in terms of the names. I'm always looking for opportunities to create better names and better abstractions. So all the tests are green. That worked. And at this time, I kind of waffled and decided I didn't know that I was going to bother to write any unit tests. I should probably come back and add at least one unit test for that clear en passant. But it is covered by the acceptance test. The last thing that I did here was to say, I think it's okay if I move all the en passant stuff to the end. So I can perform the actual piece move, and then basically I'm doing these en passant operations. One is to go through and say, hey, have I opened myself up to en passant? And then the second one is to go through and say, I have conceded that I'm not going to perform en passant if it was available to me. So I'm just going to abstract those both out and try to keep this move piece method as minimally busy as possible. So now we're just down to, hey, there's this one line in there about en passant. And that's going to make it easier maybe if we pull out a class too, where we have some kind of like en passant calculator, and at the end of the move method, we just say, hey, en passant calculator, go do your thing. now what I'm doing is card reconciliation. I'm saying pawn doesn't have en passant move capabilities, no longer really accurate. So I'm going to say that, I'm going to get this wrong at first, but I'm going to say, let's go get this working for the black pieces. It's the white pieces that we need to get it working for. For whatever reason, that's the way I implemented it, is like, you know, making the white pieces the victim of it. So we need to implement it where the black pieces are the victim of it. But either way, that's going to be the in progress item. Excepting, of course, that I added something that you'll see next time, which is to go back and clean up that mess I made with the names. So that's going to be it. I'm going to commit this and sync it up with GitHub and call it a day. So I will see you next time. And as always, thank you for watching.